Okay, and here's some of the things that just we have a few pictures of things that can be done with
Yes.
this wafer paper. So
Yes. The branch is wafer paper. It's hollow. There is no structural support in that other than the rigidity that I got from making the mold. You can see that I've got flowers coming literally up, off, and away from the cake with no armature. Those are all cherry blossoms, and there's a little tiny bit of fondant for the green and yellow on the inside for the center. So you can also see that there's some plain dragée and wafer paper cherry blossoms. The branch was molded, and the inside armature was pulled away. It was just crushed aluminum, and it was painted with colored cocoa butter, and then it was dredged with cocoa powder, because I wanted that branch to have that dry, barky feel.
It looks amazing. It really does. Okay, and I know everybody's going to be asking, what is the cake? What's the surface of the cake? Because that's cool.
Let me talk about the dragonfly for just a second.
Okay.
The wings of the dragonfly are wafer paper. The body is gum paste. Remember that blue leaf mold that we looked at a couple slides ago? Those wings actually came off of that mold. I used the center spine of the leaf mold to be the top edge of the dragonfly wing. So I just molded a bunch of leaves, and then I carefully cut them after they were dry to get the shapes that I wanted, and that's assembled with just a patch of wafer paper and piping gel again.
Very cool.
The cake background itself is a glazing technique that mimics porcelain. So in this specific instance, there is an edible icing sheet that was applied to my fondant base, and I use that because there's a very, very intricate crackle pattern. Could I have painted that on the cake and not use the edible icing? Probably. But in this specific instance, there's a layer of edible icing sheet. It was airbrushed blue and brown, so I got my gradients. And then a very thin layer of clear piping gel went down. Edible glitter was dredged onto that first layer. And then a thicker trowel of clear piping gel went over top because I wanted to catch air bubbles and I wanted to keep the edible glitter as big and open and out as possible because I wanted to create that crackle glaze texture and look to it. So that's how you get that kind of shine and that kind of texture and behavior. And it holds up as an effect until the piping gel starts to haze. So 36, 48 hours later, again, depending on the humidity, it'll finally start hazing over and getting more of a milky color.
Okay. That is just so cool. I love that. We could do a training on just that. Very cool. Okay, so this is some of your cocoa painting that you do.
Yes. This is a glass bowl, a square glass bowl. This is kind of to show what can be done for the most exotic punch bowl ever. The pebbles at the bottom are molecular gastronomy. So these could all be flavored. They're edible. They're all the rage. As you know, you can have little floaty fizzies in your drink. The fish are reverse painted on the inside of this glass bowl, and they're cocoa butter. The little froggy is cocoa butter painted, gum paste, and dragée little sculpture. He does have wire armatures in him for his little arms, and he's crawling out of the pan. Of the bowl. He's painted in cocoa butter because that actually acts as a very good waterproofer. The lotus flower that you're seeing, there's a leaf and flower separate. Those are wafer paper molded that have a very thick dipped coating of cocoa butter. And it's assembled, the cocoa butter allows you to assemble these leaves a piece at a time just as you would any other chocolate flower work. So I'm using the structure and the lightness of the wafer paper to replace all the extra weight that there would be for a conventional chocolate piece like this. So that flower will float in the water for a couple of hours, and that flower was a really big one, and I think it may have weighed 3.5, 4 ounces. It's about 6 inches across.
Oh, wow.
So
That is just so cool that you can put that in water. I mean,
yep.
water and cake just don't mix, and so this
No.
is just so cool.
No. If the water gets too warm, cocoa butter starts melting at that 85, 88 degrees. So if the bath gets too warm, and the water will finally find a crevice, and it'll get to the wafer paper, and the wafer paper will absorb the water and spread like a sponge, and it'll start pushing the cocoa butter up off of the structure, and that's when it'll start finally disintegrating.
Okay. So yeah, it lasts a little while, guys, not
Yes.
forever.
Yes. Yes.
There's another angle of that.
Yes, and this was lit from below, so you can see that the light, even though there's a thick layer of cocoa butter on these leaves, you can see that you get light through them, so you get that realistic sense of airiness and translucency that you see in a lot of these petals and flowers in nature. And again, that's what we're trying to mimic. That is a life-size bird of paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And that bird of paradise is wafer paper. It's again painted with cocoa butter. By the way, I love working with cocoa butter.
Yes.
So there's a lot of hand layering and texturing. The orange is wafer paper that I actually used orange water to mold the wafer paper. For whatever reason, pigment in the water affects the drying process and it affects the end result. It's stickier, gummier, longer. It dries a little thicker. It has to be a pH or a chemistry thing. So if you want to experiment with turning your water a color first, go ahead, but understand that it's going to behave differently than just plain water. But I really wanted that intensely vivid orange and purple for the petals. The cocoa butter is slathered on top. It's assembled with cocoa butter. There is a boba straw that is going down as a support. That entire flower, boba straw and all, weighed 7 ounces, I want to say. It's hollow on the inside. The leaves were molded straight off of a bird of paradise leaf. I didn't make a mold for that. I did use a paraffin release spray for that, and I had to run through several leaves before I got enough that didn't get too torn up or shrunk or curled the wrong way. But those are all wafer paper that you're seeing there.
Spectacular. Okay, and this, you demonstrated this at the San Diego show a couple of weeks ago. This is so cool. Love it.
This flew to Austin for their show, and I was very fortunate there. The piece did very, very well, and it survived the flight there and back and the trip down to San Diego because, again, I was invited to display the piece there. So there's another water lily wafer paper piece there, and it's about 6 inches across, and again is weighing, I want to say maybe 3 ounces, and half of that weight is the cocoa butter. The cocoa butter on that flower is much heavier than the actual wafer paper that was used.
Awesome. Okay, and so what are these fish standing on?
That's 3 tiers of isomalt. And the fish, I created a rubber stamp, and I actually just finished a how-to for American cake decorating for this, so I'm very excited on that side. But I made my own rubber stamp for my own sketch, stamped it on the inside of the curve, and then hand-painted all the cocoa butter colors. So the fish that you're looking at, you're looking through the isomalt to the painting.
Yeah, and so it's your reverse painting, and this is something we should, have you teach. Also, you just know so much. It's so cool. Well, I actually took a class on your cocoa butter painting at ICES last year, so very, very informative.
Mm-hmm. And there's all the blue that you see is airbrushed accents on the isomalt, and then there's a little bit of pearl added.
And these little beady things down at the bottom?
Those are isomalt. They're isomalt pebbles, and I developed a technique that mimics fused glass work, but I'm using pasta as an armature, and it allows you to have something to grab a hold of with your tweezers and help manipulate. It's just so much easier to work with these shapes using that base underneath. And this is an offshoot of a necklace class that I teach that is basically making glass beads with 0 molds. And you'll also see one of my mentors and biggest fans out there, Peggy Tucker, teaching this technique as well. She was one of my primary technical advisors for, again, I've got this really cool idea. I know there's something that's really great for the industry. How do we take that idea into something that is practical? So that's what she was a champion of. So yeah, it's a lot of fun playing with lusters, playing with crushed glass effects. It's just the opportunities and the ideas are endless there as well.
They're just so cool. Another shot of that same thing.
Yep.
Isn't that just spectacular, you guys? Just love it.